Hello, welcome to our channel. Today I have a question for you. How could the wisest man in the world, the one who received wisdom directly from God, end his days entangled in idolatry and far from the Creator? This is a surprising story full of profound lessons for our lives. So, go ahead and leave your like because this video will bring valuable reflections that might change the way you see faith and obedience to God. Now, get ready to dive into this incredible story and understand how wisdom without faithfulness can lead someone to ruin. Solomon's story begins in a moment of great uncertainty. His father, King David, was old and weak, and the question on everyone's mind was, who would be his successor? In the culture of that time, the firstborn was usually the heir to the throne, and one of David's eldest sons, Adonijah, believed he had the right to rule. He proclaimed himself king, organizing a great banquet and gathering support from influential people, such as Joab, the commander of the army, and Abiathar, one of the priests of that time. But there was a problem. God had already chosen Solomon to be king. Have you ever noticed how, many times, people try to take by force something that God has already determined for someone else? If you've ever experienced something like this, comment here. What God has for me, no one can take away. At this tense moment, Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, and the prophet Nathan warned David about what was happening. David then ordered that Solomon be anointed king immediately. The ceremony took place in Gihon, with the presence of the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan. Solomon was anointed with holy oil, mounted on King David's mule, and acclaimed by the people. The Bible says that the celebration was so intense that the earth seemed to shake with the sound of rejoicing. Meanwhile, Adonijah and his followers, who were celebrating his false reign, were terrified when they learned that Solomon had already been officially crowned. Thus, Solomon took the throne and began to rule a strong kingdom, with secure borders, a powerful army, and wealth accumulated by his father. But he had a great challenge ahead. How could a young and inexperienced man govern such a vast nation full of challenges? And that was when one of the most remarkable episodes of his life took place. Solomon knew that, on his own, he would not have the ability to govern Israel. And at that moment, we witness one of the most humble gestures of his entire life. The Bible says that one night, God appeared to Solomon in a dream and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." 1 Kings 3 verse 5. Now stop and think. If God spoke this to you today, what would you ask for? Write it in the comments, I want to know. Solomon could have asked for riches, power, the death of his enemies, or a long life. But what did he ask for? So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. 1 Kings 3 verse 9. How incredible. Solomon did not ask for something selfish but wisdom to govern with justice. And this pleased God so much that he responded, "Since you have not asked for wealth, nor glory, nor the death of your enemies, I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has never been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you wealth and honor, and if you walk in my ways, I will also grant you a long life." 1 Kings 3 verses 10 to 14. In other words, Solomon received much more than he asked for. And here we already learn a powerful lesson. When we seek God's ways first, He gives us everything we need and even more than we imagine. If you believe this, comment, God always gives more than we ask for. From that moment on, Solomon became the wisest man on earth. And this wisdom was put to the test right away. Shortly after receiving his wisdom, Solomon had to solve a difficult case with no apparent solution. Two women came to him, each claiming to be the mother of a baby. They lived together and had both recently given birth, but one of the babies died during the night. The question was, which of the two was telling the truth? Without evidence and without witnesses, Solomon did something shocking. He ordered a sword to be brought and said, "Cut the baby in half and give half to each woman." But at that moment, one of the women was desperate and said, "No, do not kill the child, let her stay with the other woman," while the other said, "Go ahead and divide him." At that instant, Solomon understood. The true mother was the one who was willing to give up her child so that he could live, and so he returned the baby to his real mother. This judgment left all the people in awe, for they saw that Solomon's wisdom came directly from God. And this was just the beginning of a brilliant reign, but unfortunately it would not end well. Have you heard this story before? What impresses you the most about it? Comment here. I want to know your opinion. This was the glorious beginning of Solomon's reign, a young man chosen by God, graced with wisdom and blessed with wealth and power. But what happens when someone so blessed stops listening to God and begins to rely only on themselves? Stay with me in this video because now we will see how Solomon's greatness slowly began to crumble. With wisdom and power in his hands, Solomon transformed Israel into a glorious empire. He built the famous Temple of Jerusalem, one of the most magnificent buildings in history. The kingdom prospered. Ships brought gold, silver, ivory, and even exotic animals. Solomon had luxurious palaces, a powerful army, and trade with distant nations. The Queen of Sheba, fascinated by his wisdom, traveled from far away to meet him and left in awe. Solomon's fame grew. But along with greatness came temptations. And this is where everything starts to change. If there is one thing that can destroy anyone, it is thinking they are above God's warnings. And Solomon began to ignore God's commands. To strengthen his kingdom politically, he married many foreign women, daughters of pagan kings. And it wasn't just a few. The Bible says he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Now, let me ask you, do you think these women worshiped the God of Israel? Of course not. They brought with them their own gods and pagan practices. And instead of Solomon influencing them for the good, he was the one who started to give in. Idolatry, which was strictly forbidden by God, began to enter Israel, inside the very palace of the king. At the height of his wealth and power, Solomon began to build altars for the foreign gods of his wives. And we are not just talking about simple statues. Some of these cults involved human sacrifices, prostitution, and immoral rituals. The holy city, Jerusalem, which was supposed to be the center of worship to the one true God, had now become a place of idolatry. And the worst part, King Solomon himself began to take part in these pagan rituals. The man who had received wisdom from the Lord was now blinded by the seduction of power, pleasure, and riches. Here we see a great lesson: knowledge alone is not enough. Without obedience to God, even the wisest can fall. If this story has impacted you, write in the comments. Wisdom without God leads to ruin. This helps the video reach more people. God, who had appeared to Solomon twice, now sent a prophet with a terrible warning. Because of the king's idolatry, the kingdom of Israel would be divided. And that is exactly what happened. After Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam took the throne, but his rule was a disaster. The northern tribes, outraged by heavy taxation and idolatry, rebelled and formed a new kingdom under the leadership of Jeroboam. Thus, the great united kingdom of David and Solomon was torn apart, and it was never the same again. Solomon, who had begun his reign by asking for wisdom, ended his life with a shattered kingdom, a divided people, and a nation distant from God. What a powerful lesson. Solomon's story is a warning for all of us. Wisdom without obedience does not protect anyone from failure. Small compromises lead to great falls. Wealth, power, and knowledge are meaningless without faithfulness to God. And at the end of his life, Solomon realized this. The book of Ecclesiastes reflects his frustration. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 2. He had experienced everything, but in the end he recognized. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Ecclesiastes 12 verse 13. May this story serve as a warning for us. It is useless to have everything if we do not remain faithful to the Lord. If this video made you reflect, don't forget to leave a like and comment. Faithfulness to God until the end. This helps YouTube recommend this video to more people. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now. Here we always bring Bible stories with life lessons. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Stay with God and see you in the next video.